Ki thong tin vie vu on duk kong bo, sa ku fa vie kong dong shung quan ju rung dong. Hang chucking guoi dan tu tap truok enan enen, ban torn exen zao, in huing guoi kong tin noi rang motting guoi vo lai ko the foi hop voi cha noi de saw hai chin chong min. Jia din an h, dak byet la charmi va chi gor, roi val trang thati liat vi di don. Charmi nan enen, in hunging guoi von heen lan, lian tuk hoi, tai sao con chung toi lai by fan boy nu vei. Tai sao ing guoi gan guian hat lai ko the lam jia kin kung nei. Chi gor nan enen bat kok nuk no, chung toi luon tin tuing chi el, chua bao jogi chi a lai ko the dar man den vei. Sa kong dong kung sok nang. Mot so hang exim ki lion hung chi tiat kian kong and phi luai, chi el van to ra bin thong trong ingay hom sao vuon, di cho, noi chuyen voi hang exim, kong I ingo ko a vua thuk heen mot toi orchkin hoang. Muaring guoi ju sung sa ki byet su that. Kong dong mang ki byet thong tin kung bung no kasi kuk tran luan va bin luan kin hoang. Mot so ing guoi goi dela, vuon man ro in hat trong in hunam o bin duang, trong kian hunging guoi karch beta lo lang, that dorm sa ki I de ko the lan lung tin to on saw hai chining guoi then, roi con tim kathach che gi bang fung farp kin kung nu vei. Kan saw cho byet, trong quartrin le loi kai, tam lai kua hai gi fam bat di bian doi. Chi el the heen su lo lang va doi luke so high, in hat la ki duk nyak den bang chung farp wai, camera, va kasi di vet tai heen trong. On ti ban di ko gang bin tin, in hung ki duk hoi vi chitiat han vi, on lo ro su kang thang, run ray va in hu luke kong the tra loi mak lak. Kasi chuyen jia tam lai hin su enin din rang su dong loa jua haigi fam va vits len ki hoch ti mi la diem kien vu on ne dak byet ingin trong. Ho dan za, vu on kong chi la toijit ing guai ma kon fan and tam lai bat thong, lan lung va teen toon kao de kua hai ki tu orj. Ben kandu, ko quan dia tra dang xuan by ho so de du detroit tu, bao gom. Ket quay fan teek farp y, mo tarkathach thuk saw hai va zu lai thither. Bang chung din tu, tin enin va in hat kai kua chi lva on t. Semicolon. Loi kai chung kien tu hang exim, camera in nin. Dung siu gay on va vat chung lian quan, duk tu thap tu heen trong. Fan teep theo she tap trung val chitiat ve ki hoch kua hai gi fam, kathach ho len lich saw hai, va in hung siu sok teep theo ki kong and kong bo tone bo su that truop kong chung, hua hen she he lo in hung tin tiat kin hoang hon nua. Kang dia tra sao, kong and kang fa heen ki hoch toi orch kua chi lva cha noi on ti duk xuan by kong fu den muk rung min. Theo loi kai kua hai gi fam va chung siu tu thap tu heen trong, moi vits du duk tin to on tu in hu tuin truok ki ra te. Truok tien, ho quan saw tung toi quen shine ho kua nan enen. On h, theo loi hang exim, thong di lam som, toi ve enemoir and com, va et ki ra ingoi val ban dem. Chiel da loi dung toi diem ne de lap ki hoch teep shuk voi on ti trong im lang, tran by hang exim being go. Teep theo, hai gi fam len dan sach kasi dung siu can theat, bao gom dao sak, gang te, noi lon va kasi lo I thuk fam nu bi duda, che gi mui hoi va far we di vet shine hok. Ho con tin toon jo jack chin zarch, kian achingu se la toi diem lai tuing de thuk heen han vi. Mot chitiat gay sok la trong tin en din thoi va in hat kai, chi el gi lai tung book, tu kathach du nan en ra fong ingu, den kathach di chuyen thi the ra bep, now bi du va lam sak heen trong. Noi dung na kian sa luk luong dia tra fi rung min, mot ki hoch chitiat va tan en den muk nu dang thuk heen trong mot bo fim kin di. Kong chung ki byet su that kung kong koi bang hoang. In huing guoi chia she tren mang exa hoi rang ho kong the tuing noi motting guoi fu nu lai ket hop voi. Cha noi de saw hai chong, va kathach su lai thi the voi thuk fam kankian waring guoi cam thay, kin hoang, mat nin tin val koning guoi. Kasi chuyen jia farp lai va tam lai hin su en din rang diem en gai hiam in hat kua vu on la su dong loa hong tone jua hai gi fam, ket hop voi su lan lung, tin to on ti mi. Kian han vi man ro tro nen ko luong va dorm so honin hu so voi in hung vu on thong thong. Trong ki du, jia din nan en van chua the chap en in su that. Motting guoi the noi, chung toi tungi rang jia din la noi and tonin hat. Jo day, su fan boy va dar man ne lam chung toi gan nu sui sup hone tone. Kan saw teep tuk tu thap kasi bang chung bo sung tu hin trong va din thoi, enem kung ko ho so troi tu, dong toi shwan by trin bay tone bo kor trin fam toi kua hai gi fam truok kong chung va toa on. Fan teep theo she halo chitiat ve kor trin kong and calm foreign hung buk koi kung kua vu on, kathach ho tu thap man wa desarch din tone bo amu, va and hung siu sok teep theo tu loi kai kua hai gi fam. Sowen huing gay dia tra ti mi, ko quan kong and bin duang bat di lan ra and hung man wa koi kung, halo tone bo and mu man ro kua chi lvhr noi on ti. Quay fan ti keen trong, ho en thay can bep, trung tam kua vu on, by dao lon hong tone, tu noi now, dao kio, den kasi vat dung nyo nu thot, shane bo, ju ko di vet din mo u hog by di chuyen de che gi chung siu. Dia tra vien en din, su by tri hon lone ne la ket quay kua kor trin fi tang thi the ko chu dik. Mot so vat dung duk chi el su dung de now bi du, trong kiong ti chu trach neem van chuyen fan thi the va lam sakin hung vet mo lon, enem tau ra vo bok hon hao cho han vi toi orch. Camera nin va du udin thoi kua gi fam cho thay, sa hai da di chuyen in hulan trong dem, kiem tra tung fong, don dep di vet, va gia vo numwavits van bin thong. Kasi chuyen gia farp y sao ki kiem tra hin trong en din, ho da len ki hoch cheatia den muk tung buk ju duk tin to on kai, tu vits lua chon toi diem rate, kathach di chuyen thither, cho den fung farp now nung de far we bang chung. Mot cheatiat rung min karch la di vet shine hop consort li tren san, tuing va dung siu now nung, cho thay nan enen da chong siu vo vong, va han vi kua hai gi fam kup kai tan enen, in hung van ko tin toon de kong by far heening gay. Quay kor trin fuk hoi heen trong, kan saw con far heen mot so man wan yo in hung quan trong. Kasi vet mo u ko tren tay nam kua, chung to gi fam da di chuyen in hulan. Thought va dao ko vet kat sao, dong bo voi di vet tren thither. Di vet bet va noi now cho thay fan thi the da by zu li bang and hiet, lam ko far hin chins arch trong toi gian di. In hat kai va tin en din thoi, gi li tone bo ki hoch, tu buk du nan en val fongingu, den vits dua thi the ra bet va lam sak hin trong. Kasi dia tra vien en din, vu or ne la su foi hop hon how jua ki hoch tin vi va han vi man ro, chua tung theo bin duang va sa ku vuk lan kan. Su tan en kua hai gi fam kian sa kong dong va gia din nan en roi val trang thay sok va bang hoang. Fan teep theo she halo kuk di tri kang thang ki kan saw tham van hai gi fam, in hung loi kai rung ron vi dong ko va han vi, kung fan ung du doi tu du luen. Day she la booking goat quan trong truop ki vu on duk du a ra toa. In gay sao ki hon tat vits fug hoi hin trong, kong and tien han tham van kio dien hu jo voi chi lvhr noi on ti. Kong ki tai tru so kang new day dan, boy in hung loi kai tung kao tung chu ju ko the quiet din buk teep theo kua vu on. Chi ban di van ko ju ve bin in hung ki duk hoi ve vits len ki hoch saw hai chong, kuon mat chi tai met, te run. Toi kong muon lam vei, in hung, chung toi. Gi noi kong lam, moi chuyen she lo, va she mat tat sa, chi noi trong nuk mat, he lo dong ko chin, muon di trine wakwan he bat chin voi cha noi va chin dot tai san kua chong. Ti, cha noi, trong ki ban di ko gang choi toi, kung dan fi thurenin, chung toi da tin toon tung buk, de kong I giing go. Toi jiup chi el shwan by moi tu dung siu den kathach fi tang thither. Chung toi gi rang, de la kathach dien hat de bao vi moi quan he va loi eek kua min. Loi kai na kien kasi dia travin rung min, boy su lan lung va timi trong ki hoch toi orch. Kan saw ket hop bang chung tu hin trong, camera, din thoi va kasi vat dung ko din mo u de doi chiu voi loi kai. Ket quay cho thay moi chi tiat ju kop hon tone. Chung min su dong lower hone tone va chu y toi orch kua sa hai. Day kung la ko so de kong and de gi koi to them kasi toi dan lian quan den fi tang, exim hai thi the va dong fam ko chu dik. Fan ung du luen ki by it loi kai na kung kong kem fan du doi. Tren kasi trang mang ex ahoy, in huing guoi beta su kin hoang. Kong the tin noi, su tan en va tin toon man ro ne. Mot vuon jia din mar I kung gila and tone, jo litro than konorch mong. Kathach che gi bang thuk pham, that kong the tuing noi. Kasi chuyen jia tam lian and din, vuon ne dak byet en gai hien boy su ket hop hon how jua dong ko kor enen, moi quan he bat chin va kar nang len ki hoch tin vi, kian han vi toi orch tro nen kuk kai dar man in hung ko to chuk. Tron kor trin tham van, chi lva on ti kung he lo motsachitiat kin hoang vi koan kak ra te voi nan enen, motar han vi bao luke, su vat lon kur on hva kams arch, kang thang in hung kan theat, theo kathach ho din dat. In hung loi kai ne kong chi ji up kan saw kung ko ho so mar kon lam du luin bang hoang, rung min truok muk du lan lung va tan en in kur vuon. Fan teep theo shela fan ten buk ket thuk kur kao chuyen, halo kor trin dua vuon ra an sank, fanung toa on, vacu sok koi kung voi du luin, kef lai tone bo choi tham kich de rung ron. Sao ki hon tat kasi buk jia tra, tu thap chung cuva loi kai tu haigi pham. Vuon duk ko quan kong and bin duang chuyen ho so sang vien kiem saw enen dan de xuan by troi tu. Chi lva on teaching thuk by koi to voi kasi toi dan, jiating guoi, tang tru va exim hai thida, dong pham ko chudik. Engage a zu, fien toa tu hut su quan tam dak by tu du luin. Hang tramming guoi dan, bao chi va kasi chuyen jia farp lai theo doi tung din bian. In hung loi kai rung ron kua hai gi pham duk trin bei chi tiat, moi quan he bat chin, ki hoch saw hai, kathach phi tang thi the va su dung thuk pham de che gi bang chung. Hoi dong ze zu dan za han vi kua hai by karola tanenen, kotin toon va exum pham ingim trong den dao duke, farp luit va su and tone kua jia din, dong toi gay sok nang ni cho kong dong. Luit su va chuyen jia farp lian and din. De la mot vuon jia din kuk kaingim trong, kong chi vi tin chat man ro mar kon vi su dong loa, len ki hoch chi tiat kua hai gi pham. Jia din nan enen, mak du di don top kung, beta mong muon kong lai duk thuk theing gi min. Cha mi an h cho byet, chung toi chua bao jo giing guoi gan guyen hat lai ko the fan boy va tan enen nu vei. Chi mong toa on zu dung farp luit de fan now voi bot noi dai. Fan ung kua du luan van teep tuk kang thang. In huing guoi beta su kin hoang va batting go truok kathach han dong kua hai gi pham, dak byet la vit su dung thuk pham de nao nanenen, chitiat kin kong dong mang rung min, ban torn exen zao va lan truyen in han chong. Kan saw va ko quan farp yn din vu on ne la moktrong in hung tham kich jia din man ro va tin vien hat tu truok den ne o bin duang, voi su foi hop dong loa, tin toon toi orch kuk kao. Va tam lai lan lung kua hai gi pham. Kasi buk jia tra, fu koi hin trong va tu thap bang chung duk dan zaladin hin trong kong tach far on. Koi kung, fien toa ket thuk voi ban orningi min dan cho chi lva ong ti, dong toi gui di mot thong deep man mi ve kong lai, su trung fat va kan tin kong dong ve su en gai hiem tu in hung moi quan he bat chin, long tham va tin toon toi orch. Vuon kef lai, in hung duum van kon dong lai trong tam tri kong dong, mot loi nyak nyo rang, in gay sa trong in hung jia din tuing chung binyen, su doi tro, tham vong va tin toon toi orch ko the tau ra in hung tham kich kong I in go toi. The turning point began quietly, almost invisibly. During one of the weekly women's fellowship meetings, a member named Sister Grace, a soft-spoken woman in her late 30s, confessed something that left the group uneasy. She admitted that the pastor had privately instructed her to bring her underwear to church, saying it was the only way her spiritual chains of barrenness could be broken. At first, the other women tried to comfort her, reminding her that deliverance often required strange acts of faith. But then, to Grace's shock, two other women nodded in agreement. They too had been told the same thing, though each was asked at different times, in private counseling sessions with the pastor. The room fell into a heavy silence. The women exchanged looks, the kind that spoke volumes without words, confusion, shame, and a growing sense of betrayal. If 3 of them had experienced this, how many others had silently obeyed without saying anything? Later, when the fellowship broke up, small groups lingered in corners, whispering nervously. One woman muttered, "Maybe this is a mystery of God, maybe it's holy." But another countered, shaking her head, "Holy? Since when does holiness require what should never leave a woman's privacy?" The unease grew deeper when one of them recalled that the pastor had specifically warned her not to tell anyone about the request, saying, "The devil will use people's unbelief to stop your deliverance. Keep this between us." That night, several women went home unable to sleep. They lay awake wondering, why the secrecy? Why the undergarments? And why did he seem so insistent, yet so private about it? By morning, the whispers had left the fellowship circle and begun trickling through the congregation. A storm was brewing, though no one yet knew how explosive it would become when the truth finally surfaced. As the days went by, the whispers grew louder. What had begun as a quiet exchange among the women's fellowship started to seep into the general church community. At first, it was nothing more than fragments of gossip exchanged in hushed tones after services. "Did you hear what he asked Sister Grace? I thought it was only me." "No, my cousin said she was told the same." Some dismissed the rumors immediately. They believed the pastor too much, seeing him as a man chosen by God. After all, wasn't he the one who had delivered many from sickness, poverty, and marital troubles, at least according to the testimonies that filled every Sunday service? But for others, doubt was spreading like wildfire. A few men in the congregation started questioning why their wives had suddenly become secretive about certain church assignments. One man confronted his wife directly, demanding to know why she was hiding a missing item of clothing. At first, she denied everything. Finally, under pressure, she confessed that the pastor had asked for it as part of a deliverance ritual. The man was furious. He stormed out of his home, swearing that he would confront the pastor himself. But his wife, trembling with fear, begged him not to. She repeated the same warning the pastor had given her: "If you reveal it, your deliverance will be aborted. The spirits will come back even stronger." By now, the church had become divided. Some called the whispers a demonic attack against the anointed man of God. Others suspected there was far more to the story than anyone dared to admit. Then came the first shocking testimony. A young lady, barely in her 20s, stood up during a small midweek service. Her voice shook as she said, "Pastor told me that unless I gave him my undergarment, I would never be free from the spirit of prostitution. I gave it, but my life has only become worse since then. I feel used, not delivered." Gasps filled the room. A few women wept. Some rushed to hush her, pleading with her not to say such things against the man of God. But the damage was done, the silence was broken. For the first time, the question was no longer whispered, it was spoken aloud. What exactly was the pastor doing with the women's underwear once he collected them? The moment the young woman spoke out, a ripple of unease spread throughout the congregation. That night, many families went home restless, discussing what they had heard. For the first time, husbands, brothers, and even older mothers began demanding answers. One man, a respected elder in the community, confronted his wife. He had noticed how anxious she became whenever the subject of deliverance came up. At first, she broke into tears, refusing to speak. But when he pressed harder, she admitted in a trembling voice that she too had surrendered her underwear to the pastor months ago. "I didn't want to," she whispered, "but he told me if I didn't, my children would never succeed in life. I was afraid. I thought it was God's test of obedience." The man was shaken to his core. He could not believe his wife had been manipulated in such a way. He called two of his close friends, and together they began quietly investigating. They spoke to other women in the church, and one by one, more confessions emerged. What they uncovered left them horrified. Nearly a dozen women had given in to the same secret demand. Meanwhile, outside the church walls, rumors had begun leaking into the neighborhood. People who had once admired the pastor started looking at him with suspicion. Shopkeepers whispered behind counters, young men gossiped in street corners, and neighbors shook their heads, wondering if the church was truly a place of God, or something darker. But inside the church, the pastor remained calm, almost untouchable. On Sunday morning, he stood at the pulpit, his voice thundering. "The devil is at work. He is planting lies in the mouths of the weak to destroy this ministry. If you believe the rumors, you have no place among the chosen." His words drew loud amens from loyal followers who refused to doubt him. Many clapped and shouted, silencing anyone who dared question. But for those who had seen too much, who had already confessed in secret, the words only deepened their fear. Because now, it wasn't just about what he had asked from them. It was about the bigger, unanswered question. Why was he so desperate to keep it hidden? And in the shadows, a few brave members began planning to find out. By the following week, the unease in the church had reached its boiling point. Some members remained fiercely loyal to the pastor, defending him with almost blind devotion. But others could not ignore the growing testimonies. They decided something had to be done. Quietly, late one evening, a small group of men and women gathered at the home of the elder who had first confronted his wife. There were 7 of them in total, 3 men and 4 women, all of whom either had first-hand knowledge or had listened to the disturbing confessions of others. They called themselves the Committee for Truth. The elder spoke first. "We cannot continue like this. If this man is innocent, let him be cleared. But if he is guilty, then we must protect the flock." The women nodded, though fear was written across their faces. One of them admitted that the pastor had warned her never to speak, threatening that a curse would fall on anyone who revealed the secret. But now, with the courage of the group behind her, she was ready to break the silence. The committee made a plan. They would quietly monitor the pastor's movements, especially after private counseling sessions. 2 of the men volunteered to follow him discreetly whenever he left the church office. Another suggested they try to access the locked storage room behind the pulpit, a place rarely entered except by the pastor himself. For several days, they watched. They noted how often women were summoned into his office alone, and how frequently the pastor left the building carrying small, sealed bags. One evening, after he departed, the committee decided to act. Using a spare key that one of the longtime ushers secretly possessed, they opened the storage room. The moment the door creaked open, a foul, heavy odor filled the air, an odor that was neither natural nor holy. The women gasped, covering their noses. Inside the room were several boxes stacked against the wall, each carefully sealed. With trembling hands, they opened one. What they found inside made their blood run cold. The box was full of women's undergarments. Some were neatly folded, others crumpled as if discarded in haste. They were dozens, perhaps hundreds, far more than anyone had imagined. The women in the committee began to cry. The men stood frozen, their anger and disbelief colliding in their chests. Now the truth could no longer be denied. This was not a rumor. This was not a test of faith. This was something darker, something that had been deliberately hidden. But the worst part was still to come. Because as they searched deeper into the storage room, they discovered that the undergarments were not just being collected. They were being used. The committee stood frozen in that dimly lit storage room, their hearts pounding like drums of war. The boxes filled with women's undergarments were already enough to shatter every illusion of holiness they once had of their pastor. But curiosity, mixed with dread, drove them to search further. In the corner of the room stood a wooden cabinet. Its doors were scratched, and the lock had been broken and repaired multiple times, as though it had been forced open before. One of the men, gathering his courage, forced it open again. What they found inside was beyond disturbing. There were black candles melted onto small, wooden altars. Jars filled with thick, murky liquids sat alongside strange powders and oils. And among them were garments, underwear, tied together with strings, some stained with substances the committee could not identify. The women recoiled, one of them collapsing into tears as she whispered, "This is witchcraft, it has to be." On the top shelf lay a notebook, its pages covered in strange markings and words that did not look like scripture. One man, trembling, flipped through it. Page after page detailed rituals, instructions on how to use women's undergarments to trap their spiritual essence, and gain authority over the destiny. The words chilled their blood. It was clear now, the pastor had not been using the undergarments for deliverance. He was using them for dark rituals of control and power. The women wept bitterly, realizing that their trust had been twisted into a weapon against them. One whispered in anguish, "We thought he was praying for us, but he was binding us." As they left the storage room, shaken to their core, the committee knew this was no longer just a matter of church gossip. This was a spiritual crime, a violation of trust, and possibly a danger to every woman who had ever stepped into the pastor's office. But exposing him would not be easy. He was powerful, beloved by many, and feared by even more. Some would defend him blindly, while others would accuse the committee of blasphemy. Still, they made a vow that night, the truth had to come out, no matter the cost. Little did they know, the pastor already suspected that someone had been snooping around his secret room. And he was preparing to strike back before his empire of fear collapsed. The very next Sunday, the church was unusually tense. The committee members sat scattered among the congregation, their minds heavy with the dark discovery they had made just days earlier. None of them dared speak openly yet, but their eyes were fixed on the pulpit, waiting to see if the pastor would reveal any sign of guilt. And then, it happened. The pastor stormed onto the stage with unusual fury in his eyes. His booming voice filled the hall as he declared, "God has revealed to me that spies are among us. Enemies sent by Satan have entered this church to destroy the work of the Lord." The congregation gasped. Whispers erupted. Some looked around nervously, wondering who the spies were. The committee members exchanged anxious glances, realizing immediately that the pastor had somehow sensed their secret. He continued, his voice thundering like a hammer, "Whoever is sneaking into the house of God, stealing holy items, and spreading lies shall be cursed. Their families shall not prosper, and their children will suffer for their rebellion against the anointed." The atmosphere turned electric. Some members broke into cries of "Amen." Others clapped furiously, their loyalty blinding them to the strange nature of his words. But a quiet unease grew among the rest, those who had begun to doubt. After the service, the intimidation became personal. One of the committee members, a woman named Ruth, received a strange anonymous call. The voice on the other end whispered, "We know what you saw. Stop talking, or you will regret it." Another man returned home to find a small dead bird placed on his doorstep, a chilling warning. The elder who had organized the secret meeting reported that unknown men had been watching his house late at night, parked in a black car with tinted windows. Fear spread quickly within the committee. Some began to question whether they had the strength to continue. One of the women even begged to drop the matter, fearing for her children's safety. But the elder reminded them of the vow they had made. If we stay silent, he wins. If we speak, at least the truth has a chance to be heard. Little did they know, the pastor was not only trying to scare them into silence. He was preparing a counterattack, planning to discredit them publicly before they could ever expose what he was doing. And soon, the battle between truth and deception would explode in the most dramatic way.